Hi, we're here in Chicago with Nick Ignatz. He's going to be talking to us today about the End the Fed movement that started in Germany. Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
And excuse me, let me just say hi to everyone in Germany. Hi to Luke, who's been blogging this, video blogging the End the Fed movement in Germany and bringing awareness around the world. And hi to Lars, I believe, who was the one who got it started in Germany. And everybody, thousands of people that are taking part. So we're here in solidarity with you.
Okay, great. Can you tell us how you got involved in monetary reform?
I never would have believed that I would have gotten involved in monetary reform. When I was a young man, I listened to what my elders told me and listened to what my country told me, and went off to fight in Vietnam. And it wasn't until after I returned that I realized the enormity of the tragedy of this war that was just completely unnecessary. It was just a war of aggression against poor people that wanted to do nothing more than unify their country. And so I became an anti-war activist. And when we went into war in Iraq and Afghanistan, I didn't have a full knowledge at all of what was going on, or the whole repercussions, the legalities of it. All I knew that it was wrong. But as I became more involved as an anti-war activist, and that kind of morphs over into also being concerned with social justice for people, the economic wars against people all across the globe, then I realized that there was a common denominator. And the common denominator was our monetary system. Our monetary system creates money for the benefit of the wealthy through their banking system, and they get to use that money for what they want to, and a lot of what they want to do is use it for war.
Okay. Should we end the Fed?
Well, as I said, I am in complete solidarity with the movement in Germany, but just ending the Fed is not going to take care of the whole problem. We need a broader approach that encompasses the whole of the monetary system, because what we want to do is not so much end the Fed. We want to change the monetary system.
Okay. Can you explain more about monetary reform being a common denominator?
Yeah, it's a common denominator because we look at what don't we have funding for. We don't have funding for our kids to go to school. We don't have funding to take care of everybody's health care needs in our country, and this is across the globe too, because everybody's using our monetary system. We don't have funding for people to stay in their homes. We lost 9 million families lost their homes in this depression that we're still in. And that translates not to 90 million people, but more like 30 million people were thrown out. That's 10% of the U.S. population lost their homes. So these are the kinds of things that we have to do. But there's never any money to do these. Right now, the federal government is debating how they can band-aid and put together some kind of a highway bill just to keep the highways in the deplorable state they're in right now. And we need to do so much more than that, but they don't have the money. Okay. So that's what monetary reform will do.
Good. What is money now, and what should it be?
That's the $64,000 question, because I think that presently our money is created as debt. And so we have what's called debt-based money created by banks. That's where our money comes from. Only a small portion of the money is bills and coins, 2-3%. The rest of it, 97%, is created as debt when a bank makes a loan to you. So, for example, if you go out and you buy a car, or if you're just using your credit card, and the bank advances you money for that. Let's say you buy a car for $10,000, and the bank gives you $10,000 for that. They create that money out of thin air. Now, this is something I didn't know until a few years ago. I just absolutely couldn't get my mind around what they created out of thin air. It doesn't even make sense. How could a private bank do this, and how could that be the right system to have? But they create the money out of thin air. What they do is they create a deposit in your name in their bank, and it's a like deposit to the amount of the money. So that $10,000 they give you a check for the car, they create a deposit in your name for $10,000. As you make your payments and pay down the principal, that deposit is extinguished. So when you make your last car payment, the deposit is completely extinguished and the money is extinguished. But what happens with that loan? The whole time you're paying interest on it. When they create the money with the deposit, the matching deposit, and the advance to you with the check, they create the amount of the principal, the $10,000. But over the life of the loan, you're paying 5, 6, 7%, whatever the percentage is, on the principal. That money's not created. So there's never enough money in the system for everybody to get out of debt, because they're not creating the interest. It's a system that's designed to put all of us in the middle class, the working class, the poor class, everybody down at the bottom, or as the Occupy movement says, basically the 99%, is designed to put us into debt and keep us there. And it's doing a good job of that.
Okay. You were saying something about Aristotle earlier. Could you?
Well, there's another system. So that's one system we have, where we allow the banks, this is what we have. We allow the banks, they do it through their Federal Reserve System. So it's not like I'm not against the Federal Reserve System. They do it through their Federal Reserve System, making these loans, creating this money, generating tremendous wealth, using it for wars, using it for financial bubbles that they blow up and bring down at the same time, and they make money when it goes up and they make money when it goes down, and we lose both ways. Going up, we lose going down. So there's another system of money, another way of looking at money, where money would be more democratic. Aristotle used the phrase to describe this, that money exists not by nature. And what does that mean? I don't know. What does that mean? Money exists not by nature. What he meant when he said money exists not by nature is that money exists not as gold or silver, as a commodity. Money exists by law. That's what Aristotle said. So what we need to do is to put the money creation back with the federal government as a means of law. And it's not just, it's a legal power of the state, but that's what money should be. Abstract, you can't put your hands on it. It's not gold or silver or whatever it is. It's a dollar, whatever the government says a dollar is. But it's used for the benefit of the people, so that we can provide for the things that the people need, to fix our infrastructure, et cetera, to educate our children, to provide health care, and to provide jobs at a living wage. This is what money should be used for.
Okay. Can you tell us a little about the recent admissions from the monetary establishment in Britain?
This is very, it's exciting. It's exciting because the Federal Reserve, economists, you know, when I went to college and I took my economics course in college, and we got to the part about the Federal Reserve, the professor said that we're going to skip this part because there are only a few people in the country that really understand exactly what the Federal Reserve does and how it does. Now, this is going back a few years. You're a Vietnam veteran, you know. I wasn't born yesterday, and I wasn't in college yesterday. But the whole concept of the Federal Reserve was not taught. It wasn't even taught to us exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so basically, we're uneducated here. What's happened recently, within the last 6-9 months in Britain, there have been several revelations where the financial establishment, the centuries-old financial establishment, is making admissions saying exactly what I've been telling you is exactly true. And I'd like to read just a couple of them here. The first one is this is from the Bank of England, their quarterly bulletin for the first quarter of 2014. It's entitled Money Creation in the Modern Economy. Overview. This article explains how the majority of money in the modern economy is created by commercial banks making loans. And this is highlighted. Whenever a bank makes a loan, it simultaneously creates a matching deposit in the borrower's bank account, thereby creating new money. The reality of how money is created today differs from the description found in some economic textbooks. This is the Bank of England. The Bank of England is what the Federal Reserve was patterned after when it was created. Now there's another gentleman, Martin Wolf. He's the financial writer for the Financial Times. Many people consider him the most influential financial writer in the world. And his recent column of a month or two ago was entitled, "Strip Private Banks of Their Power to Create Money." Again, these are exactly the things that we've been talking about here. It goes on. That was the title of it. Printing counterfeit, this is Martin Wolf, "Printing counterfeit banknotes is illegal, but creating private money is not. The interdependence between the state and the businesses that can do this is the source of much of the instability of our economics. It could and should be terminated." So we've got Martin Wolf, and then there's one other one here, and this is Jonathan Adair Turner. And this guy is he's a lord, he's a baron in Great Britain. He has been the chairman of just about every economic commission in Britain. He's just Financial Service Authority chairman, chairman of the Pensions Commission, the Committee on Climate Change. Anyway, he describes himself as a technocrat. I'm not quite sure what a technocrat is. But anyway, he is respected in the financial establishment. He's very, very respected. He gave a lecture to the Stockholm School of Economics in September of 2013, which is one of the top establishment economic schools. And it was Credit, Money, and Leverage was the title of it. But anyway, let me just read some of the highlighted portions of what this Adair Turner was saying. He said, "Modern textbook assumptions are dramatic and wrong. They tend to assume that what banks do is take deposits from household depositors and lend it to borrowers. That misses the insight that banks create credit and money and purchasing power." And then he goes on, "That ignores almost entirely the fact that most credit extension is no longer funding business capital projects." So they not only don't take depositors' money and loan it out, they create the money, is what he's saying. And that economic textbooks don't say that, and that the credit extension is not funding, what money they do create is not funding infrastructure, it's not funding factories or anything like that. It's no longer funding business capital projects, it's funding bubbles. And so it's wonderful that the British financial establishment is coming out with these things, but we're not hearing these things in the United States, and we need to hear these things.
Okay. What's the NEED Act?
The NEED Act stands for the National Emergency Employment Defense Act, NEED. It's available, all of this information is available at monetary.org. Monetary.org. That's the website for the American Monetary Institute. And the NEED Act was in our last Congress. It's not before this Congress, but it's legislation that was put together that would change our monetary system from a debt-based monetary system like we've been talking about to a monetary system of money created by law. And there are three primary reforms that are all necessary in the NEED Act. The first one concerns what our friends in Germany are addressing, which is the Federal Reserve. It doesn't say end the Federal Reserve. It says change the Federal Reserve, bring the Federal Reserve into the federal government, because presently the Federal Reserve is basically a representation of the private U.S. banks. So it's not really a part of the federal government. So it would bring the Federal Reserve into the Department of Treasury. It would create a monetary authority, which would be somewhat similar to the Supreme Court, which would determine how much money we could make without having inflation, without having deflation, so that the money would stay even on an even keel how much it was worth, and then it would make that much money. The Congress would be the one that would determine how that money was spent, just like it says in the Constitution. So there's a separation of how much money is created and then how it's spent. So that's the first reform. The first reform is to bring the Federal Reserve into the federal government, which is actually, that's where people think it is right now, but it isn't. The second reform is to end this bank creation of debt money. It's sometimes referred to as fractional reserve lending. It would just decisively end that. From after the NEED Act was passed, there would be no more bank creation of money as debt. Our money would be created by the government debt-free and spent into circulation rather than loaned into circulation. As far as the banks go, then they would loan out money that depositors have given them with permission that they could loan it to other people, and of course the depositor then would benefit as far as on the interest that was charged. They would do what people think that banks do now, loan money that they've been given by depositors to other people, not create money. And the third part, the third reform that's absolutely necessary is it's necessary for the federal government to create money, originate money, U.S. money, and spend it into circulation. Because if we take the bank power to create money, but we don't spend new money into circulation, we'll have a depression. There won't be enough money. So we need to have enough money in the system.
Hey, can you tell us more specifically what would the NEED Act do for the people?
Boy, I think it would end the depression. It would just, everything we hear now is, all the solutions are austerity this, austerity this, how much can we cut here, how much can we cut there. Specifically, what the NEED Act says is that it would, number one, it would pay a citizen's dividend to each citizen. Now the amount is not specified, but the amount should be substantial. There's a need to do this. I'm a former small businessman, and what I've heard ever since this first recession, then it morphed into a depression, started, was that we have to lubricate the lending of banks so that they can loan money to our businesses, to our small businesses. Well, I'll tell you what, these small businessmen that are still in business now, and women, that are still in business now, are under such tremendous pressure to keep their heads above water. And the last thing they need is more loans. What our small businessmen need, and small business women need, is they need customers with money to buy what they're making, what they're selling. And it's as simple as that. So if we give an infusion of money, you can look at it as a bailout to the 99%. An infusion of money to people as a people's dividend, this would right away lubricate things. One of the reasons that the stimulus didn't work very well with the Obama administration, etc., was because they couldn't get the infrastructure projects going. They didn't spend enough money anyway, but or take into account because they're operating under the old monetary system. But it takes a long time to get a bridge built, to do the engineering for it, and to get all of the environmental concerns taken care of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for infrastructure projects. So you have to have an infusion of money into the system when everything has been dried up. And the financial relief that we got through the stimulus didn't do that. So it's necessary to get money into the system, to get it into the system right away. Not at the top, but at the bottom where it's needed. So this would be our bailout. It could easily be $10,000 per person, but that amount hadn't been set. So that would be one thing it would do. It would end the depression. It would take off so much pressure from the people that have experienced the worst hardships of the depression. And these things could be done in other countries too. This should be done to everybody's monetary system, not just ours. But we need to set the standard because everybody does, because we dominate the world militarily and economically, and we make people go along with this system, that we have to change here first. I mean, we're looking for help from others to tell us what to do, but we need to change here first. So that's a big thing that it would do for people. The second thing that it calls for is the American Society of Civil Engineers. They have what's called an infrastructure report card. Their infrastructure report card, when the NEED Act was written, called for $2.2 trillion worth of infrastructure repairs to be done in the United States to bring us up to just a passing grade. That was in 2009. The new report card, 2013, after the NEED Act was written, says that that amount needs to be $3.6 trillion. So we need to create this money. The NEED Act would create this money, spend it into existence, fixing our bridges, fixing our highways, fixing our water systems, fixing our sewage systems across the country, our electrical infrastructure. All of these, our airports, this is all infrastructure. You can go online and look it up, the American Society of Civil Engineers report card. And right now they're debating in Congress how to just patch together some sort of a bill that would pay less than 10% of what needs to be done every year. And so that's a big thing. The third thing, and in doing that, at the original estimate that was given, the $2.2 trillion, that would create estimated 7 million new jobs, basically good paying jobs. If we use the higher dollar figure and get on with using the $3.6 trillion figure, create 10 million new jobs. That's exactly what we need to do to end this austerity. The NEED Act would also provide funds. 25% of all new government-created U.S. money would be given to the states, individual states based on population, to use as they see fit. Almost all of our states are broke. So they have tremendous financial pressures. This would distribute it throughout the country for them to use as they see fit for their own projects. It would also provide funds for the cities and municipalities on a local level to borrow money interest-free from the federal government. So as far as the way things are financed right now with bonds, very expensive to, when you build a school or you make a water treatment plant or a sewer or something or other like that, the municipalities finance it with bond financing and pay interest on it. This way, they would have to pay the principal back to the federal government, but the interest would be free, and that would, again, generate all sorts of good things for the country. We could start actually building libraries instead of closing libraries, fixing our schools up, building new schools instead of closing them.
You mentioned the American Monetary Institute earlier. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, the American Monetary Institute is a nonprofit organization. Their website is monetary.org, and they're kind of headquartered in upstate New York. And also, Steven Zarlinga is the director of the American Monetary Institute, and he and I have become quite good friends over the last couple of years. And I look upon him as a mentor on the monetary reform for me. And he also lives in the Chicago area, and so anyway, we have our annual annual monetary conference, which is coming up it's either the end of September or early October. I'm not sure, but it's right on the web page, and people are really encouraged to get on there and to come to the conference for it's 3 or 4 days, I think 3 days in Chicago in the fall. We have beautiful weather here in Chicago, and you'll hear the best monetary minds in the country. I went last year the first time and was really blown away by the conference, but we'll have people coming in from Germany and Japan. And these are professors and learned people who have written many papers. Now, for example, last year, is Dr. Michael Kumhoff, who is I'm trying to think of his exact thing, but he's the planning manager or something or other for the modeling division for the International Monetary Fund. And he wrote a paper along with another gentleman at the IMF, which has brought about some of these revelations in Britain. It was his paper that was referring to the NEED Act and referring to what was called the American Monetary Act, which preceded the NEED Act, and that was written by the American Monetary Institute and Steven Zarlinga. And then Dennis Kucinich was the congressman that put the NEED Act before Congress. Also, John Conyers from Detroit was a co-sponsor. But right now we don't have any co-sponsors. We don't have any sponsors, not sponsored in Congress. So I would encourage everybody to contact their congressman and send them a copy of this NEED Act. You can just copy it online and send it to them, and ask them, why are you not supporting this? this is going to end our depression. And the other thing about the NEED Act is this is not a there's no inflation with this. It is chartered to keep the money the same on an even keel. No inflation or deflation. Deflation is actually worse than inflation. That's when the money shrinks and nobody has any money. That's where we are right now. We're in deflation for the people, but the banks have inflation because they have a tremendous influx of money that they've been given by the government, and they're using that to create more bubbles. So they're doing fine. We're not doing so fine.
Okay, thank you, Nick. There's going to be a Chicago workshop for Occupying the NEED Act Thursday, July 31st at 6:30 p.m. and that'll be at 333 South Ashland Avenue at the Workers United Union Hall. And you can contact Nick Agnatz at occupynick@yahoo.com.
Thank you. Yeah, and one of the efforts that we're trying to get is unions. We have the Chicago Teachers Union, which is a very influential union and a powerful union, who has endorsed the NEED Act. We're trying to get other unions involved. So we're going to have regular monthly meetings in Chicago at the Workers United. I believe it'll be on this one is on a Thursday, July 31st, 6:30. Please come. I'm available, again, occupynick@yahoo.com. And we need to get the unions behind this, because this is good for all working people, whether you're in a union or not. But we need the unions to champion it and to get behind the Congress to get out there and support the NEED Act, because this is what people need.